Let's let everybody in.
All right. Hey, greetings, everyone, and welcome to our VBC Happy Hour. It is always a joy to be joining you on our Monday nights when we have our in-depth conversations about the military experience, past and present. That's what the Veterans Breakfast Club does. That's what we do on VBC Happy Hour. My name is Todd DiPastino. I'm the executive director of the Veterans Breakfast Club, and I have been for 15 years. We've been doing this for 15 years. I know I don't look that old, but I've been doing it a while. And the whole idea is we have this nonprofit in Pittsburgh where we gather veterans together, have them share their stories with the public, and then just have conversations around, as I said, the military experience, past and present. And tonight we have a special treat. We have 88-year-old Bud Mendenhall joining us from Fort Wayne, Indiana. Bud is a Korean War Navy veteran, served on the USS Carmick during the blockade of Wonsan, which is a not very well-known episode of the Korean War, but it is the longest naval blockade in history, and Bud was a part of it on a minesweeper. So we're going to hear all about his service, hear about that aspect, especially of the Korean War. Bud, you're joining us from Fort Wayne. How are you tonight?
Well, I'm doing great. Honored to be here.
You seem like you're great, and you're joining us from also the remarkable museum, the National Veterans Shrine and Museum, Memorial Shrine and Museum there at Fort Wayne, and we're going to have you talk about what that is and all the stuff that you do. I'm looking out. I just want to say hello, Bruce Unks. You don't join us that often. Good to see you. Bert Kennedy, Korean War veteran. He's a very active here in the Korean War Veterans Association here in Pittsburgh, and that is our local here in Pittsburgh Korean War Veterans Memorial behind Bert. You could see behind him in his screen there. Who else? Mr. Masters, as always, wonderful to see you. And Bud, I have to thank George Kutcher. George Kutcher always joins us. I don't think he ever turns on his video, but George met you in Fort Wayne last September. He ran into you, started talking to you, I think gave you our VBC magazine, and then he immediately contacted me and said, "You've got to get Bud Mendenhall on. He's got a lot of stories. He's great." So I really want to thank George Kutcher for making this possible.
Nice fellow, right?
Wonderful of him. So I just want to, before we go much further, I want to acknowledge that today is May 8th, the 78th anniversary of VE Day, the surrender of Germany in Europe. And there were two surrenders, as many of you know, the one to the Americans and to the British, and to the French, as far as I can remember, was done in Reims, France, a town about 90 miles northeast maybe of Paris, in this little red schoolhouse. Personally, doesn't look real little. It's red, but it doesn't look little to me. I mean, this isn't like, I picture a little red schoolhouse as a one-room clapboard red schoolhouse, but they call it the Little Red Schoolhouse. This was the SHAEF, the Supreme Headquarters of Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe, and so that's why the surrender was signed there. But the Soviets only didn't have like a high-ranking enough official there at the surrender, so they wanted a second one in Berlin at the Soviet headquarters, and they got it. And they got that one. Here's a field marshal signing the surrender, the instrument of surrender there in Berlin on May 8th. So we acknowledge that VE Day is officially May 8th, and that was 78 years ago. 78 years ago today. I also want to acknowledge our sponsor, Tobacco-Free Adagio Health. They've been our sponsor for a long time now, years. I think we're getting into years, Sean Hall. And they provide health and wellness and nutrition services and support throughout Pennsylvania and through some of West Virginia. Tobacco-Free is their program dedicated to preventing and reducing tobacco use. They educate people about the hazards of tobacco and vaping, and they advocate for healthier places to live, work, and play. They also help people quit. If they want to quit tobacco, they could call the 1-800 number, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, or they could access support and counseling at their website, tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org, tobaccofree.adagiohealth.org. Bud Mendenhall, did you smoke when you were in the Navy?
Yes, I did.
Of course you did. Everybody smoked back then.
Right.
Right? When did you first start smoking, Bud? Don't tell me when you were 13 years old.
No, when I joined the Navy.
Okay.
Yeah. And drinking coffee. I never drank coffee before I joined the Navy. Yeah. I just turned 17.
Isn't that amazing? Just turned 17 when he joined the Navy. Oh my goodness. We do this every Monday night, this VBC happy hour. We always have a different guest or different subject, different theme. It's always a fascinating conversation. We are going from the Korean War tonight to next week. We're going to the post 9/11 era in Iraq. Sean, why don't you tell us about our guest next week?
Yeah, Don Bentley. I'm really excited for this because he writes these sort of thriller novels. You could think Jack Ryan. You could think Mitch Rapp, which in fact Don Bentley is taking over for the Mitch Rapp series. He's also written a Tom Clancy novel. He has written his own series based with this character Matt Drake, which I've started. Forgotten War is the new one, just came out last week. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with him about character development, how he is distinguishing his sort of hero from all of the other ones that we know and love. It's so up my alley. I love the one guy versus everything James Bond type thing. I just always loved it as a kid. So I'm going to geek out next week when I get to chat with Don. So please join us next Monday at 7.
And then we also have a new podcast, Scuttlebutt podcast, out today. And Sean, you have prepared just a clip, right? A 2-minute clip of the conversation you had with your Scuttlebutt guests that was just released today.
I did. Here it is. You'll see Amy Upcraft there on the right and Leah Johnson. Amy Upcraft is the founder and artistic director of the Veterans Spouse Project. Leah is the executive director and development director. We were connected through a different guest of the Scuttlebutt, but we sat down a couple weeks ago and talked about the Veteran Spouse Project and a play that Amy wrote. She went around and interviewed spouses of military veterans because both of them had married into the military, and she wrote a play called I Will Wait. This is her talking about sort of the inception of that idea, and here we go.
Yeah, exactly.
Can we talk a bit about that reality? Because that's something that I believe you get into, and I Will Wait, the play that you've developed. But talk about your personal journey with that, because as we've learned at VBC, when somebody joins the military, their whole family is joining. It's very much like it is a ripple effect. But marrying into it, how much of a culture shock was that?
It was, for me, it was a massive culture shock. I mean, I had gone to college, gotten my theater degree, moved to New York City. So I lived in a very different world than the military world. And I don't think, I didn't understand really how different those two environments and communities can be. So it was very overwhelming. And I think for me, when I got married, my husband was going to do his 5-year commitment and get out. And then 9/11 happened. And I think for a lot of spouses of my generation, of our generation, 9/11 changed everything. When 9/11 happened, my husband was like, I'm not getting out. And I had to, and willingly understood that. But then who could have predicted that the war was going to last 20 plus years? My husband deployed 5 times, Leah's deployed even more. And, when you hit the 10, 12 year mark and, we have 4 kids. And so kind of I Will Wait was born out of that. It was born in between Jamie's 3rd and 4th deployment. I had our 4th baby on his 3rd deployment. He was home for a year, but training the whole time to get ready to go back for the 4th deployment. And I just had a really, really hard time. And I felt like, is anyone else struggling with this? Is anyone else?
So as you could see, we had a really in-depth conversation. Leah and Amy and I. Leah was, if you remember back at that time, Leah was with her husband. He was the last person on a deployment leaving. She had just given birth, and he was leaving hours after the birth of his daughter. And Leah talks about how CBS News had come in and was looking to interview somebody, and they interviewed both of them, and what happened through that. It's a really great conversation and discussion that I had with the two of them. We'll put the link in the chat if you'd like to check out the whole episode.
Thank you, Sean. I see somebody new, a new name, Mortimer Lightstone. I just want to say hello, Mortimer. How are you? Where are you joining us from?
Hi, I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada. I was with the Canadian Forces in Korea. I was aircrew and navigator, served a total of 28 years. Currently in a luxury veterans home in Toronto. Been here about 9 months now. Gosh, you can make a baby in that time. But I had a good service career, saw the world, also served in the Cold War and put in some time in Vietnam as well.
Oh my goodness.
Acquired over 6,800 hours in operations.
Wow, Mortimer, thank you so much for joining us. You have to be here because of Scott Masters, I'm guessing, right?
Oh, 100%. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. Scott, thank you so much for directing Mortimer to us.
Oh, my pleasure. Mort is awesome. I had the pleasure of having him at my school a number of times over the last 10, 12 years or so. Great guy with great stories.
Oh, how terrific. Thank you, Mortimer. Mort, I will be in touch with you about having you come on to share more of your service experience.
Okay, Todd, it'll be a pleasure.
Thank you. I want to say hi to our senior veteran in the room, Julia Parsons, 102 years old, Navy codebreaker from World War II. Hello, Julia. I haven't seen you in a while.
Oh, I've been here and I listened to Scott yesterday or day before.
That's right.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
It was very good. And Bob Connor was on, the one who we had on last month, I guess.
Yeah, I have to say.
Anyway, he was.
Yeah, Scott told me that you and Bob Miller, the Navy veteran, 99-year-old Navy veteran, were on his program and you had a great conversation.
We did. He let us all talk together when the kids were gone, and it turned out to be very interesting. So,
oh, how neat. And Scott, this was a class that you held on a Sunday? Oh, Scott Masters, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yeah, I'm good there. We do weekend get-togethers every once in a while. It allows my students from different classes to attend. So I had learned about what I thought was a 103-year-old Navy wave in California. She turned out to be 102, but she's a few months Julia's senior, and we had a fantastic talk, and listening to the two of them and Bob Miller go back and forth was a real treat. I learned more about Navy girdles yesterday than I ever had before.
We can do a whole happy hour, Navy girdles. We'll have to put that on the docket. How fantastic. Thank you, Scott. And I'm so glad that Julia participated in that. I see that we have Joe Griffey's with us also. And I want, before we get to Bud's story, I do want Joe to talk a little bit. Sean, if you could ask Joe to unmute Joe Griffey, CM Griffey's, you'll see him there. I know Joe's going to be in Washington, D.C. this weekend for the Vietnam War commemoration. And as you know, or as many of you know, I assume that there's a 3-day commemoration of a pretty big deal in Washington, D.C. from, I think, May 11th through May 13th to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the end of the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Joe Griffey's, who is a Vietnam veteran, who is also the long-standing host and director of the Welcome Home program in Ocean City, New Jersey. He's a radio host for WIBG AM 1020 AM there. And of course, nowadays you can get any kind of radio station across the world through the internet and on Facebook. So Joe, let me see here if I could find you and ask you what you're going to be doing and what's going to be going on in Washington, D.C. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, Todd, Sean, how are you guys doing, everyone? Good evening. Starting May 11th, this Wednesday, this Thursday, the 12th, and I'm sorry, Thursday, the 11th, Friday, the 12th, and Saturday, the 13th, we will be celebrating, and I'm losing count of all the 50-year anniversaries Vietnam veterans are having, but it's good. We can never have enough. And Washington will be honoring us with the largest Welcome Home Veterans celebration over a 3-day period. It'll be, like I said, on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. There's over about 125 exhibits that will be set up all over the mall area, the hockey field, the softball field, in front of the Lincoln Memorial. There'll be tents and generators for people that need electricity. And I even heard they're putting some sidewalks in. So they're not sparing any expense. And it's to celebrate the 50th year of something for the Vietnam veteran. I'm just not quite sure yet, but it's a welcome home. They will be having exhibits. They will be having flyovers. All military equipment there will be from Vietnam. The flyovers will be UEs or planes that flew in Vietnam. Each day will start around 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll go till 6 or 7 at night. Reason Across America and the Welcome Home Show, they asked us to join in for a while. They're doing a live broadcast from the Library of Congress on Thursday evening at 5 o'clock. And then they will be doing a live broadcast Friday and Saturday from the Women's War Memorial, which is at the entrance of Arlington, which is a Women's War Memorial. And Todd, I'm sure you know Phyllis Wilson. Yep. Great lady. And they honor all our female veterans or women that had anything to do, whether they were donut dollies, which are long forgotten about, wax waves, that during World War II, any association with the Red Cross, they want their stories and they're on exhibit, and they really, Phyllis does a great job there. And then we will be doing our show Saturday from 10 to 1 on the mall. We'll be taping our show. And I know we're going to have people like Ann Mills Griffith that founded the Vietnam Veterans, MIA POW, her and her dad, Jan Scruggs, my good friend Jan, who built the Vietnam Wall. I think Mrs. Evans that built the Nurses Memorial, and just a whole slew of everyday veterans that are going to be there that want to thank one another. And one other thing important, Todd, they're going to have a medical station set up with doctors and nurses that were in Vietnam. And they're going to try and link up with any soldiers that they took care of when they were in Vietnam to have like a reunion. And of course, we're going to be pinning with the welcome home, not the welcome home, the welcome home pin that's from the government. I'm sure you're familiar with that, Todd. Right. And they also have a new one now for a pin for veterans, a pin for moms and dads, and a pin for brothers and sisters. And there's a fourth pin. I just forget off the top of my head what it's for. Maybe you know, but it'll be any veteran. Everything is free. That's the main thing. Veterans don't have to pay nothing. The only way it could be any better is if the Veterans Breakfast Club was down there with us. And with that, I'll let you get on with your show. But it's all free, and there'll be plenty of parking and plenty of people there to help you. Don't be afraid if you're in a wheelchair, you got a walker, you got a cane, we'll have people help you.
It'll be a Vietnam Veteran Palooza. A Vietnam Veteran Palooza in Washington, D.C. this weekend. Joe Griffiths will be there. And Joe, in the chat, I put how people could connect to your Welcome Home show, which is every Saturday from 2 to 4 p.m. Add whatever other information you might help people to join your program. People could call in, people could just listen, but it's every Saturday, 2 to 4 p.m.
Todd, if I can add one other thing to you and Sean real quick. I know you got a busy show. What you guys are doing, radio shows, podcasts, blogs that people write on the internet, they're so important to all stages of veterans, their families, their children, their spouses. We have a little over 20 million vets in the country. A lot of times 20 million vets feel like they're forgotten about. But when we got Todd and Sean and shows like the Siege of Wonsan and Veterans Breakfast Club and the Veteran Next Door with Randall Baxter, and I could name a whole slew of them. You guys are keeping the word of the veteran alive, and I want to thank you for that. And Go on with your show. Nothing me.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I mean, we love veteran stories here, and that's why we asked Bud Mendenhall. And, it only works if people like Bud are willing to go through the, hassle of getting on Zoom and making sure the computer connection is right. Bud, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I say it's my honor and pleasure. Thanks to Robert here that we made it.
Yes. Thank you, Robert, for connecting Bud tonight. Now, Bud, I know you were born in Chicago. Your family moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana when you were a child, correct?
Right.
And what made you want to join the Navy at age 17 in 1952?
Well, there was 10 of us guys, juniors in high school. We thought, well, let's go join the Navy. We can get our GEDs, and we thought we knew everything. 17-year-old kids, so they took us down to Indianapolis, and the recruiter down there, he said, there was 21 of us in the room. He said, I want to tell you guys something. If you guys want to leave now, because once you're sworn in, you're ours.
Yeah.
You're not going to run home to mama.
Right.
Well, we're smart, 17-year-old kids. Well, we all raised our hand. We're going to stay. So after he got us sworn in, he says, okay, this has to go in the Marines and this has to go in the Navy. And we thought, what just happened here?
Yeah.
We didn't know the Marines was a division of the Navy. And then after boot camp, they put us in a big hangar, and the whole troop there, or whatever you want to call them, and they put us in alphabetic order. And then they says the A's are going here, B's are going here, C's are going here. When they got to me, they said the M's are going on minesweeper. And I thought, oh my God, And then they flew me out to San Diego and put me on the Carmick, and trained me on the 40 millimeters on the way over. And the time went pretty fast.
And this is the ship. This is the minesweeper.
Yes.
Apparently,
Yes.
a World War II destroyer turned into a minesweeper, the USS Carmick, DMS 33. Can I go back a little bit and ask? I believe that you had two brothers already in the Navy. Is that correct?
Yes. I had an older brother in the Navy, but my younger brother came in after me.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did your parents feel about you joining the Navy, quitting school, and joining it?
They signed me, signed me up, and they said that's what you want to do, but you better get your GED when you get out.
Now, did you say that they trained you on the guns on the way over to Korea?
Yes, on the 40 millimeters. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Talk about
We had some
on-the-job
in
training.
boot camp, but that wasn't the real thing, and so I got trained on a lot of different things. And the minesweeper, they had to turn it on the back, but they took that off, and that's what made our ship fast to go 41 mile an hour. And they put the minesweeper equipment on the back on each side. That's where we got our speed at.
I'm going to ask you, Bud, a little bit about how a minesweeper works, because I had an uncle who served on a minesweeper in World War II. And for many years, I would say, oh, he served on a minesweeper. I have no idea how a minesweeper actually worked. I pictured a big broom kind of sweeping the ocean ahead of you. But how did it actually work? How does a minesweeper work?
Cables that went out, and they had like a pound, I forget what they call them, like things that flow on top of water. There we go. Yeah. And the cutters, there's a float to tell you where the cutters were. And we had minemen on there that handled all this. I didn't handle it, but I asked the same question. How do you get mines up here? And they said, well, the floor, and that floor, they found a floor, and that line will go like that, and it will cut the cable, and the mine comes to the top. Then we take our 40 millimeters and shoot and blow them up. But the problem is with that, the only time you're in trouble that you haven't this coming out both sides is when you have mines coming out both sides, because then you're in the middle of a minefield.
Oh my.
If you got them coming up both sides. But that's what we do. We sweep, and then when they come up, we get our 40 millimeters, shoot them. Some guys would take M1s and try to blow them up because you had to hit them right on the ends there. You couldn't hit them in the middle,
So these things were submerged. These mines were submerged, and they were tethered to the sea bottom. You would sever that connection.
Cut them, and they come up to the top.
Okay, they would float to the top, and then you would shoot them, and you'd try and aim for those little spikes on the mines.
Sure, yeah.
To get them to blow. Here's
Yeah.
another, I don't know if this is like the same generation of minesweeping.
Yeah, that's an auxiliary minesweeper, the wooden ships. They're the ones that got hit and blown up a lot over in Korea.
Why did they get blown up a lot?
Well, they sit in mines, and I got a picture. Let me show you one here.
Okay.
This guy in Graybeard magazines that we get, it's a national thing. And
Right.
what he'd do, he had a camera inside of his shirt. And when we be coming out, he was on the 40 millimeters on the port, and I was on the starboard. He'd get up and turn around and start clicking pictures. Well, here we were leaving the harbor. I don't know if you can see this or not. And
Yeah, we can see
took
it.
the picture, that AMS, auxiliary minesweeper, hit a mine. And that's what happened to it.
Oh my. And I think I could find that on the internet and share it also.
Yeah, he took these pictures. Yeah, it's that's how we learn a lot of stuff. But we were pretty fortunate because a lot of them go in. I think there's more minesweepers sunk in Korean War than World War II.
I was surprised doing my homework for this program, but just how many minesweepers, how important, I should say, minesweepers were in the Korean War. And one of the reasons was because, it was Korea. Korea is a peninsula surrounded by water on three sides. And the enemy had plenty of time to lay minefields and plenty of assistance from China and the Soviet Union to lay very elaborate minefields, protecting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
at Incheon, the Marines were circling out here waiting for us to clear the minefield so that they could land at Incheon.
now, speaking of Marines, I see that Brad Washabaugh, our Marine in residence. Hello, Colonel. As he put in the chat here about the name, your ship's namesake, Major Carmick. Who was Major Carmick, Bud and Brad? I'll ask you first, Bud.
He was in 1812. I was just looking up today because I figured you'd ask me this question. We just knew we was told it was named after a Marine. And I thought, well, I'm going to look up who it. And he was in the big battles and won big battles in 1812 and 1910 and all that. Yeah, and he got the ship named after him.
1812, 1910. Bob Miswall remembers that. Were you in the War of 1812, Bob Miswall? That was before your time. Brad Washabaugh, what do you know about Major Carmick?
Well, it's one of the benefits of sending out the bulletin. I did a little research myself and I was interested in the ship and the namesake. And it turns out that Major Carmick was a hero of the Battle of New Orleans. And he also was on the USS Constitution. And at the time, he was one of the leading officers in the Marine Corps. It was very small at that time. It expanded later, but he was wounded by a type of rocket that the Star Spangled Banner, you hear the rocket's red glare. There's a particular rocket that was fired that hit him. He was severely wounded and passed away 2 years after his wounding. Huh. But he is buried in New Orleans. He helped save the city of New Orleans from the British invasion. And his grave is visited by Marines very often, and a wreath is still laid at his grave to pay homage to this Marine hero.
How wonderful that over, 2 centuries, he's still remembered and still being honored.
Yes. Yep. And we were pretty fortunate because when we be getting fired at, our captain, he would zigzag a lot for some reason. I think God was with us and him zigzagging, they probably missed us a lot. But yeah, it's.
And I'm going to show a map of Korea just so people get a sense of the war and where you were. Here's the Korean Peninsula. Here's the 38th parallel, separating north from south. For the first year of combat since from June 1950 to about June 1951, it was a back and forth war, moving back and forth in November, December. American forces, November, December 1950, American forces were up here by the Yalu River. Then, of course, China poured in. There are hundreds of thousands of millions of soldiers across the border, pushing the Allies, the UN forces south. Wonsan is right here. It's a very important city in North Korea. There's Pyongyang, the capital, here. There's Hungnam up here in the north, and there's Kojo in the south. Wonsan is an important port city with important railroad networks, I think, connecting connecting to the major cities. And so your mission was to be part of the blockade of that city of Wonsan after it fell into North Korean hands in December, January 1951.
Yeah, we waited for trains. There was, when you go into Wonsan Harbor, there was a tunnel, and they had to come out of this tunnel, and there's an opening. And when they go to get in this other tunnel, well, what we do, we sit there and wait for them. Somehow the captain knew when they were coming. I don't know, anyhow. So we wait for them to come out of the tunnel, and then we start firing at them. And that's how we hit trains and knocked out trains.
Wow! So you knocked out trains.
Yeah,
So there was,
troop trains and ammunition trains.
Here's Wonsan right here. You can see it's a port city with a deep water port right here. It had an airstrip. It had a railroad, and it also, I think, had petroleum refineries there.
Yeah, I don't know.
So plenty of targets right here at Wonsan.
Yeah,
and it was very fiercely defended by the North Koreans.
Oh, yeah.
And there were many. I mean, I would imagine. I don't know if you remember how many U.S. ships here were just offshore, engaged in battle.
Yeah, we never seen any. We were close in all the time. All the times I'm Navy, I never seen a battleship or a cruiser.
Really?
No, they were way out here. I'll tell you, one time we were in there and we started getting fired at. Well, we knocked it out. We call offshore battery. We see like a fire. What do they call it here? Let me see here. I got some stuff written down. A flash, off the land.
Yeah.
And that was me. And then we start seeing splashes in the water, and we'd aim for that flash. See, and that's how we knocked them out.
Wow. So minesweepers, you were really close to shore. You were close to the enemy.
Yeah. And one time we were in Wonsan, and apparently the captain didn't know it. It was at night. We was waiting for this train. Well, apparently at night the tide goes out. And we were stuck in this middle of this minefield at night, and we couldn't figure out why we just staying here. Well, they didn't tell us till the next morning when the tide came back in. We went out. That's why we had to stay in there. Thank God they didn't see us.
So you had run aground?
Do what?
You had run aground because of the low tide?
Well, the tide goes out where you can't move.
Yeah.
It's not deep enough to get out.
That's terrifying. You're a sitting duck, right?
Yeah. And then that wasn't very exciting. But then we captured 13 prisoners up in Sanjin, laying Russian mines.
How did you capture them?
Well, there was an island there, and there's some army guys on this island, and when what we patrolled, and we came around one way, we was halfway around, and they called us and said, hey, there's some Koreans, they're laying sampans, they're laying mines, waiting for you to come back around. So we doubled back and got them, and we sunk the mines, and we captured the 13 prisoners, and then we turned them over to the ROK.
To the ROK, the Republic of Korea forces.
Yeah.
Don Nemchek has a question. Don, if you want to unmute yourself, great question here. I should have asked it already. Let me see here, Don. I'll give you a minute. Oh, there you are. Hey, Don, how are you?
I'm doing well, Todd. This is a great program, but I salute your service, buddy. I'm a Navy guy myself. Just curious, what was your rate in the Navy? What was your job on board the ship?
What was my job?
Yes, sir.
I take care of the 40 millimeters and the 5-inch 38s, we wash them down, or, and then they get salt water on them or something. We just scrape the paint. And I tell you what, we didn't have a lot to do. We sat back in the gun shack or, and just sit. There wasn't a lot to do.
Were you a gunner's mate, bud?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we really didn't.
I'm gonna show a picture of a gun and ask if this was your gun, or if it was like one of the guns like this.
Yes,
was
I was
it?
on quad 40s. I got a picture of them here. Let me
Quad 40s.
me
Okay.
on right here. There's the one. Let's see. There you go.
Oh, okay.
That's quad 40s.
And what was, how would you take care of them?
What? Well, we just made sure they fired. You know, like say they get salt water, we scrape paint and all that. And I made sure they worked, be ready all the time.
Hold on a second. Now, did you fire it often?
What?
Did you fire it? Did you fire the weapon?
Yeah, I was a pointer. You have a pointer and a trainer. The trainer brings them around, you know, like this, and the pointer makes the barrels go up and down like that. And the pointer fires them. I push on a pedal, and then when they told me to stop, the captain that stands up here, he'd hit me on the shoulder because you couldn't hear any orders. He would be in the middle there, and he'd hit me on the shoulder to stop firing.
Here's a photo.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah,
there
yeah.
it is, and you can see.
Yeah, I was on the pointer. I'd be this side. The trainer, the guy brought the barrels around, running around this way. We got some shells there. Robert's got some shells here, the 40s.
Yeah, and you can see the shells on the deck here. They must be
Yeah,
really.
yeah. That's it. That's them.
Boy, oh boy! And you would fire at targets on shore.
Yeah. Oh, we had 20 millimeters. It would. We had 20 millimeters. We had forward. Yeah. We'd be firing a 20. We'd go in. We'd be firing them all, the 5-inch, 38, the 20s, and the 40s. We start getting those flashes. That's what we do.
How many crew members were on your?
I think about 221.
Okay. And how was discipline on a minesweeper, which is
there wasn't any.
Okay.
You know, you just you see an officer, you say hi, you very see them, you know, and we were all close, and there wasn't. We'd go around with our shirts off, and you know,
it was what they call the dungaree Navy.
Whatever, yeah.
Bruce Sunks, you have a question?
Sure.
Bruce, you could unmute yourself there. Oh. And David,
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce, how are you?
Good, Todd. But I was just wondering, your minesweeper, what was the draft on that? Evidently, it was less than other ships that would hit the mines. And how far below the waterline were the mines when they were attached to the floor?
I really don't know. That's usually a boatsman could tell you that. I couldn't tell you that. I really don't know. I don't know.
He was maintaining the guns, Bruce. What does he know about draft? And
yeah, somebody else asked me that.
Hey,
and I said, what's the draft?
About draft?
But I think you're right. And the other thing I've heard about minesweepers, and I think there are minesweepers today that are made out of wood.
Yeah, those are the ones that really had it tough over there. I mean, they were getting sunk. They were getting hit all the time. And we'd have to go in. They'd start getting fired at. And we'd have to go and lay a smoke screen out so they could get their minesweeper gear in. And get out of there. Yeah,
because they were smaller. You guys were big because you were a former destroyer, so that you guys were a very large minesweeper.
Yeah, we were a destroyer minesweeper. Yeah, it was what you call the high-speed minesweeper because we'd go 41 mile an hour.
That is very fast.
Yeah, that's fast. Yeah.
Were you ever scared?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I knew as soon as we be making that turn into Wonsan, we get in there and we start getting fired at right away. You knew that was coming as soon as you went in there. That they see, you know, we go in during the daytime. If we had knockout train like during the day, you know, and you just kept on going. But our captain, he would zigzag, and I don't know, with so many other ships. When there was a guy in our Korean chapter, his ship got hit when they went in there. He was on the destroyer.
Boy,
and they used to do the same thing, going and take out trains and that. And yeah.
And I should let people know this blockade lasted 861 days from February 1951 to right through to the armistice, which was July 27th, 1953. Do you remember that day, July 27th, 1953? Were you at sea that day?
Yeah, I was over there.
You were there.
No, wait, no, 19th. No, I was over there. No, wait, yeah, 54. Yeah, I was over there, and I spent my last 2 years in the Philippines. Yeah, I was over there then. Yeah.
So were you on the Carmick when you
yeah,
heard that the Korean War was over?
There, yeah, because our sister ship, the Thompson, got hit, and we had to take their turn over there. They had to come back, and so we had to take their turn, stay there.
How long were you at sea at one
2 years.
time? Oh my gosh. That's a long time, bud.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but you know, you kept it. I don't know. It was a long time. You know, we go out to the tender and get our food, and then they give us fuel and stuff like that.
And you truly did not step foot on shore. How long did you go without stepping foot on shore?
I think we went back when we found out we had to stay there. The Thompson got hit. They took us back to Japan for 3 days for a rest period. We got to go up to Mount Fuji at a hotel and stay there for 3 days. And then we went back to the ship, then went back to Korea.
Oh, geez, 3 days. That's all you got?
Yeah.
Oh, you're barely walking straight after 3 days, I would imagine. You know?
Wait, at Busan, we went up there one time because our captain had to get orders. And when we pulled into Busan, the Army had a hut there, they were stationed there. And we got to go walk around on the dock and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was Busan. Brad Washabaugh, great question here in the chat. Could you ask Bud?
Well, I was wondering, Korea, the winters are brutal, and being aboard ship and being outside with the guns, what was winter like aboard ship?
What was winter like?
Winter, yes.
Well, it's cool because we didn't have the gear that they have today. I would have my jeans on, a pair of shoes, and we had jackets from World War II. And then it got cool, especially when you had duty. You was on this is what I found out. I went on watch at 4 o'clock and got off. No, at 12 o'clock. It started 12 o'clock. I got off at 4 o'clock. 4 hours I was on lookout, standing out there on the wing, and it got cold, so they let me come in the pilot house for a while to warm up, then back out. And then so I got off at 4, lay down, went back to bunker, lay down, and went to sleep. They come back at 4 o'clock. So it was time to go on duty. I said, just got off. No, 8 o'clock they came. I said, I just got off at 4. They said it's 4 on, 4 off.
Wow.
And so I went back on lookout again, Yeah, it was cold, but not as bad as the Marines had it and the Army guys. We had guys in our chapter here, Korean chapter here. It was 2 of my friends. They were in the Chosin Reservoir.
Right.
And those guys, he had to sleep on the ground at 58 below zero.
Right.
And it's they're the guys that really had it tough. They didn't have tents.
Oh, wow.
Hard
They
to
slept in
imagine.
sleeping bags.
Here is a picture of a South Korean minesweeper hitting a mine.
Yeah, that's
off
it there.
Wonsan.
Yeah.
October
the
19th.
YMSs. Yeah, the South Koreans,
YMSs.
I'm telling you, those wooden ships, they had it tough.
Oh, that's
It's why
terrifying.
why a lot of them were wooden, because at that time they also had magnetic mines.
And so how were you protected as a metal ship from magnetic?
Well, we
mines?
weren't.
Oh,
I don't know how they knew where the metal one, magnet ones were. We never could figure that out. But they were always, those poor guys. They were always getting hit or something. Yeah.
Did you have a good skipper?
Yeah, he was the best. I'll tell you, like I say, he knew apparently that when we was getting fired at, we was going right in at him, he'd keep zigzagging.
Mm-hmm.
Where the other captains, some of these other destroyers and stuff, they go right straight in, and they were getting hit all the time. But
And
we were fortunate.
And this was an unusual battle. It was a sea to land battle of exchanging shells, and American ships were getting hit.
Yeah.
And then Wonsan was just devastated by the shelling that the U.S. did over the course of the war.
We had a Russian sub pinned in, and our captain called out to the, I think it was Wonsan Harbor where we had him pinned in. And so the captain called out to some ship, I guess the admiral or somebody, and told him, what should we do? He said, you got to let him out, because we're not at war with Russia. So they said, make sure you follow him back to the base. So we followed him all the way, back to his base. Yeah, we were fighting the Russians, the North Koreans, and the Chinese.
Geez, so you encountered a Soviet sub and you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. No, because the captain said we're not at war with. The admiral told him, whoever out there, told him we're not at war with Russia.
Wow. Hey, David, Michael McComb, thank you for correcting me. I showed a picture of an anti-aircraft gun before.
Yeah.
You have a comment here, David, about the marksman on the ship?
Yeah, I figured if he didn't get hit, he had one, because when I was in Nam, we were on a ship and we had to go through mine areas. And the thing was, I thought it was hilarious. It seemed the best shot we had on our ship was the cook, and the captain used to call for the cook, get the cook up here. We weren't shooting anything out of the water till he got there, and it was like we blew up everything in the way, and then we felt secure. So
yeah, we got a guy here that's our chaplain. We just got him at the shrine out here. He was on one of the riverboats over at Nam, and we talked to him. He's got a lot of good stories, I'll tell you. Yeah, and our ship, the guy that wrote the stuff in our Graveyards magazine, he was in the laundry, but he was a good shot, so he was on the starboard. I mean, port 40 millimeters. Yeah, he worked in the laundry. Yeah. When he sounded battle alarm, the alarm, he come out there, you run to your battle stations. Yeah.
Now, when you were, I'm thinking through this, Bud, you're 18, 19 years old when you're experiencing war in Korea and these dangerous situations. Were you writing your folks back home, and what were you saying to them if you were?
No, I didn't write a lot. I was raised by a single mother, and I'd write maybe once a month. Just tell her, I wouldn't tell her what I did or anything, the food was bad or good, or the weather and things like that.
Food's great. Having a great time here in Korea. Couldn't be better. Yeah.
Well, when I came home, and this is funny, some of the guys asked me, where you been for so long? I said, I was in Korea. They said, well, where's that at? I said, in California.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've heard that from so many Korean War veterans, Bud. I've heard that. We heard it. We had a breakfast last Tuesday here in the South Hills of Pittsburgh. We had a nice big crowd, and we had 3 Korean War veterans with us. And one of them said the exact same thing. Somebody said to him, "Hey, where have you been?" They said Korea, and they said, is that still going on? I mean, what was going on there? I mean, the people the folks back home really weren't following it.
Well, and my wife and her high school friends, they have a class reunion. She's 84. They still have reunions in her class. And about 9 years ago, at the one class reunion, there's a doctor sitting down here, and and we were talking. He said, the doctor said we were pretty lucky. We graduated in 1956. We were pretty lucky. There wasn't anything going on since World War II. Our country never seen any wars or anything. Only World War II.
Well, yeah. In 1952, how aware were you of the?
I wasn't. I wasn't. No. When they said that you're going on a minesweeper to Korea, again, I said, what this happened? Yeah,
unbelievable.
What was going on? Well, we were totally on the way over there.
You were told on the way over there,
Yeah.
hey, we're at war and this is what you're going to be doing
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Can I ask you, so when you found out that the armistice, the ceasefire had been
Mhm.
signed on July 27th, 1953, did you celebrate? Was there a
No,
No.
it was just another day, because you know, things are still been going on over there. They're still getting fired at. You know, I taught the guys that just came back and, oh yeah.
So it's not like the mines just disappear all of a sudden because
No,
paperwork is signed
one
and
guy told
right.
me, I think a year or two ago that, he said he had guy got shot at and dragged him back over across the line.
Man alive. And
Yeah.
then so after, I guess sometime after the armistice, then you ended up doing 2 years, you said, in the Philippines?
Yeah, well, yeah, and here's another nice thing they do for you. They gave me 3 choices. Where do you want to go? I said, wow,
Nice.
this is nice. Well, I like to go to Europe. You know, I want to go to Europe, France, and Germany. They says, okay, and so they sent me to the Philippines. But that was nice too. You know, I did.
And what did you do in the
easy.
was it shore duty in the Philippines?
It was real easy. It was nice because I was at the end of the base because I was handled the ammunition, you know, and ordnance, and they kept us all at the end of the base. And I was in a hut with 5 other guys. There's 6 of us slept in this hut, and we made our own food. We'd go out and get our own food and cook there. And yeah, we didn't have to muster every morning. We wore what we wanted to wear and did what we wanted. You know, that was it. That was really nice.
Let me ask you, looking back now, I mean, you're 88 years old now. You served in the Navy. I guess it was 4 years, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
You're glad you did it?
Yes, I'd do it again. I think, especially this generation, they should have to serve for 4 years or 2 years at least in a service.
I just saw Mort clap his hands in agreement. Bert Kennedy was nodding and laughing. Yeah.
My grandson, he's a recruiter for the Army National Guard, and he's been in 13 years.
Wow.
And he's going to retire out of it. And, you know, he's a good kid. But I think I run into so many kids, but there's a lot of good kids. You know, we got schools that are coming out to the museum now, bring their kids out here. And they're, especially the middle schools, oh, they ask such good questions and they really enjoy it.
They do. I agree with you. My wife is an 8th grade English teacher, and she says 8th graders are some of the best students because they're smart enough to have, they're curious and smart enough to have questions.
Yes.
But they're not like too cool to ask them. So
right.
they come out and ask them, you know?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the museum. That's where you are right now. This is the Veterans National Memorial Shrine and Museum. It's in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's quite a remarkably large campus for a
40 acres.
40 acres for a small city of Fort Wayne, Indiana. It is quite a gem that you guys have. What is the National Memorial Shrine and Museum, and what do you do there?
Well, I'll let Robert step in here.
Okay.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
He's our curator.
How you doing?
Robert is a curator. Robert, are you a veteran or are you just a nerdy historian like me?
No, I'm a actual veteran of the Army. So
you were Army. Okay, so you're Army. When did you serve and what did you do in the Army?
1984 to 2010, which I spent 3 years active, and then the rest of it was the Guard, but and then went to Iraq in 2008.
Oh, okay. So you were deployed and everything. Okay. Wow. Well, it's fantastic to have you, and I'm glad that your generation is being hopefully represented at the National Shrine and Museum. Tell us a little bit about what you do there at the museum.
Well, my job varies from different things. Biggest thing is, of course, bringing in new artifacts when they come in and inputting them into our system. Add new artifacts to the exhibits that are on display. Currently, there's one for each of the wars, and then we'll be expanding up each of those exhibits as our new museum, which we're just moving into, is getting filled up right now. So there's quite a bit to do there. And of course, some of the other jobs, of course, interviewing with other veterans and finding about their history and trying to help other veterans with anything they may need to know about what they need to know for help, what they'd like to learn about their family's history, things like that. Because there's so many things out there available that people have lots of questions.
So you do. So it sounds like you're kind of a one-stop shop in a sense for military history, veterans community, remembrance, war and remembrance. Here is, it looks like a museum and then an annex. It looks like you have a lot of exhibit space. And
yes, we do. We just moved from where you see that torpedo, and now it's part of the original museum. That was 2,000 square feet, and the Paul Wolf Museum that you see on the outside, that is the brand new building. It's 6,000 square feet. So we've gone quite a bit of an increase in the amount of displays there, which is.
So there's the old building right there and the new one right to the left. And so you have 8,000 square feet of exhibit space.
Well, we're only going to use 6,000 because this room that right now is the torpedo room, which the torpedo is right behind me right now.
Right.
Is actually going to become the Medal of Honor Research Library, and that'll be open to the public any day. We're actually opening the museum, and they'll be able to come in and research anything about the military itself. It can be from personal stories that is told to actual military manuals. So they'll be able to come in and look at anything we have available to help them learn more about the history of the military.
Very cool. And here is this remarkable permanent installation you have. It is an 80% replica of the National Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington,
Yes,
D.C.
Yeah, it's 8 foot at the very center rather than 10 foot, and it's 360 foot in length. So It's pretty good size.
You must have people visiting that a lot.
Oh yeah, we actually have people because it's open all the time. We actually have people come early morning, late evenings. They'll come a lot of times even when we're not open, just to come and sit alone, to sit and contemplate either who's on the wall or off with their buddies. They're no longer with them.
And you're also apparently in the works is another replica of the Korean War Memorial that you have kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah, it'll be similar to that in that you see it on the Korean War and this monument there. Mostly everybody has ponchos on of sorts. We actually know that they didn't all wear ponchos. They wore overcoats and, various states of dress. And we'll have like a small patrol of about 12 people, and they will be coming in, patrolling like they're coming back from after that mission. And they got a minesweeper ahead trying to clear make sure that their path is clear for them coming back to their home base.
Boy, oh boy. And you're getting those fabricated somewhere and they'll be shipped in and.
Yes, and it will be actually dedicated on Veterans Day on November 11th.
May 27th.
No, that's the museum, bud.
Oh.
Yeah, there's the shrine there, and then the museum will be dedicated on Memorial Day weekend on the 27th, starting at 11 o'clock. The day before that, we will actually start our Memorial Day weekend with a watch fire starting at 6 p.m. and we'll go to 6 p.m. on Saturday, and we will burn logs in honor of all the veterans who have passed away. And they don't have to necessarily pass away in war. Just it can be as recent as just recently passed away from old age, disease, or whatever. And we honor every one of them during that 24-hour period.
So if anybody is in the Fort Wayne area, they should absolutely stop by, reserve some time to check out the exhibits and the wall and the other things that you have there. Bill Confer, Bill, if you want to, let's see, I'll ask you to unmute. Bill Confer, if you want to, you put a good observation about a 40 and 8. It looks like. I'm going to take down my screen so I could see the room here. Cliff. All right, Cliff, and then Bill. Cliff, you have your hand up. Cliff Pfeiffer.
Yes. Bud, I've got a question for you. I'm an old river rat from the Delta Navy, So I've got to ask you this question because you were on a converted destroyer. Did you ever hear the old Navy expression 40 knots and no smoke?
I can't hear him. He talking
40
to
knots
me.
and 40 knots and no smoke.
No, no, I never heard that one.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to,
40 knots, no smoke. No.
it's an old expression from World War II. And evidently during World War II, the destroyers, when they had a chance, they would like to race each other. And
Okay.
the first one up to 40 knots would win if it didn't have smoke coming out of the smokestack.
Yeah. Okay.
I got another story to tell you before about volunteering.
Yes, tell us.
One of the guy, he went to dump the garbage over to Fantail, you know. He dumped it, but he went over the border with it, and we were on our way to Korea. And he was so lucky, it happened to be another guy standing there and seeing it. They sounded the alarm man overboard. So, of course, everybody, you know, runs there down there by the gate. And the guy named Morals, he grabbed a life preserver and dove in and got him. And, you know, was trying to bring him in. They was both holding on to that. And then the chief petty officer stand by the gate. Me and my friend was standing by the gate, and some other guys, he says, I'm going to need 2 volunteers to go help Marlowe's. And we looked at one another, we looked around, we was the only 2 guys standing there, and he looked us in the eye and says, I need 2 volunteers to help Marlowe's. So the corporal was there. He gave us a small bottle of brandy like you get on airplanes. He said, one of you guys take this down, because when you hit the water, your stomach's going to tighten up.
Oh,
So anyhow, you know, everybody disappeared when he, you know, asked for 2 volunteers, but we were standing by the gate.
There you are.
I had to get that story out. That's funny though.
Oh, that is a good one. Bill Confer, you made a very sharp-eyed observation of a artifact that's in the museum that was pictured in the gallery there on the website. Here it is, a 40 and 8, and this is wonderful. Bill, tell us about the 40 and 8.
Well, we have one here at Fort Indiantown Gap right here in central Pennsylvania. And one of those train cars was given to every state. I believe it was after World War I, but it was either carried 40 men in it or 8 horses during the war. And when they gave the train cars to everybody, like I said, one to every state, they were full of wine and cheese and all the great stuff from France and the countries over in Europe in appreciation for us helping them with the war. So that's one of them right there. And they've been pretty tight in there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure they were. And I think there were 40 and 8s in World War II also.
Yeah,
still being
could have
used.
been.
But I had never heard France gave one to every United States. Really?
Yeah, every state got one. And it's good Indiana kept theirs. And Pennsylvania has theirs at Fort Indiantown Gap, just outside Harrisburg, our capital.
Yeah, the original 40 and 8 actually came from after World War II.
Was it after World War II?
Yeah, the box cars were all given to the United States as a thank you after 1947 when we sent 700 box cars worth of food, clothing, and so forth to France because they were literally having the worst winter they'd had in years. And in 1949, to say thank you to everybody in the United States for sending all this stuff, they sent 49 boxcars back to the United States, and each one held, various items of, of course, wine, cheese, art, like you said. Each one also had one bridal gown that a soldier could give to his bride to be, and each state. They don't know where a lot of them don't have any idea where they went, and they all went someplace. We know the wine and cheese went to the government because, everybody in the high mucks, the governors and all that, they probably had a good time with it. And then everybody else got to see what came in these cars as they took them around. In fact, this boxcar had actually been located at Indianapolis there originally when it first got after it went around the state, and then it moved up to Bluffton and sat there in Bluffton for a few years, and they repainted it for the first time there. And then it was brought up to Fort Wayne, and when it went to Fort Wayne, it sat at Memorial Park, and it sat there without all of its emblems that would go on it. There's actually emblems that go on the side of each one. There's a province of France is each marked with a shield on the side of the car, and then it has a red, white, and blue stripe that goes on it. And of course, on one side is all in French, the other side is on English. And we're going to be restoring that on this car. We just repainted the whole thing, so it's gotten its brand new paint job. But it came here in 1978, and it's been here ever since. This is the longest it's ever stayed any place, and it's well protected inside the building right now.
I had no idea that these boxcars were given to every state. This is the first time I'm hearing this story. What a wonderful story. Robert, you should write an article for VBC Magazine on this distribution of boxcars and on the role of the 40 and 8. And I should tell people about VBC Magazine. We like to take a kind of a station break here at the top of the hour. VBC Magazine is the magazine of the Veterans Breakfast Club. It's published quarterly. We take the stories like the one that Bud's sharing with us tonight. We write them up and we put them in. Every quarter, we send out these magazines to about 8,500 households, and then we print up another 7,500 to hand distribute around the nation. I send boxes of 50 to Cliff Pfeiffer in Colorado. He distributes them, and then people get to read them, and they get to join us on Zoom. It's absolutely wonderful. It's the big marketing that we do. And people get the magazine, and then they look at it and they realize, oh, we're online, and they join us online. And it's just a terrific way to get the word out, both about the Veterans Breakfast Club and to share veteran stories. So if you do not get the magazine, it's because we don't have your address. Let us know your address. We'd be happy to put them in the mail. They're free. We could send you one. We could send you 50. Todd@veteransbreakfastclub.org. You could just send me an email. I'd be happy to send those to you. I could send you 40 or 8 or 1, whichever you'd like. Todd@veteransbreakfastclub.org. And also we have a survey. We have a very simple survey where we just ask you 3 questions. What did you think of the program? What did you like or not like about it? And what can we improve? And we will be sharing the link to our survey here in the chat. Oh, and finally, I want to let people know that all our programs, all these VBC happy hours, are now archived in one place in reverse chronological order on our website. You go to veteransbreakfastclub.org, hover over events, click past live events, and you could see them all here. And so if ever you want to share a link of a past event that you want to share with somebody, that's where you want to go. Henry Shepke, you should unmute yourself. Let me see if I can get you unmuted. Hey, Henry, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How about you?
What grade are you in, Henry?
9th.
So you are now no longer the optimum age of, according to me. I just said a few minutes ago that 8th graders are the best students. You took objection to that, huh? Exception to that. Yeah. 9th graders.
There are some good kids. There are some good 8th graders, but last year was pretty chaotic for me.
Oh, so chaotic. Oh my gosh. My wife, again, she's a teacher. These are hard years since the pandemic.
Yeah.
What kind of classes do you tend to enjoy in school, Henry?
History, English. Those are some classes that I really like.
Do you ever in your history class or even in your English class, do you ever, does like kind of what we do here in the Veterans Breakfast Club, and you've been joining us since 2020, veteran stories, does it ever come up? Does it ever help you, I should say, the kind of stuff that you've learned at VBC events?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we just started learning about World War I. We just finished that, and now we're in the 20s. So it does, I have definitely learned a lot on the VBC, which definitely helps bring perspective to some of the events that we discuss in class.
I feel sorry for your fellow students after you start getting into World War II, because you are going to be light years ahead of them, and they're going to have. So Henry has a project where he's been collecting autographs from World War II veterans around the country, and also sending thank you cards. You've sent hundreds of cards to hundreds of veterans. I think you're probably almost approaching 500 at this point.
Probably exceeding, to be honest.
Any interesting autographs you've gotten lately?
Well, I have one right here, actually. I don't know if you can see it. This is a Soviet veteran living in Brooklyn. He's like 101 or 102, and there are many Soviet veterans living in the U.S. Most of them are Jewish. They had to leave because of anti-Semitism and stuff that was occurring in the Soviet Union, and he fought all throughout the Eastern Front, and he was wounded very early on in the war. But his son actually is going to go to the VE Day celebration and get all the veterans to sign up photos for me for my collection. I talked to him over the phone, I think like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, he's a really nice person.
Oh boy, would he ever be willing to come on Zoom? Boy, would it be interesting to have him on.
Maybe, yeah.
Scott Masters, do you know Soviet veterans in Toronto?
Yeah, I was actually just doing a posting a little earlier for May the 9th for tomorrow, because it's Victory Day.
Right.
So I chronicled one of the Soviet veterans we interviewed there, and his story is very similar to the one that Henry just mentioned. He's a Lithuanian Jew who got out of the Soviet Union in the 1980s. A lot of them came to Canada as well after the collapse of the USSR, and his story was a pretty amazing one.
Do you think between you and Henry, we might be able to get a quorum, or one or two or three, maybe even Soviet veterans of World War II to come on to a VBC happy hour? Might that be able to work?
I would be happy to try, but I've interviewed 5 or 6 up here, and I believe they're unfortunately all passed away now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would imagine. It's amazing that they survived that war.
I wanted to mention one more thing, if I could, Todd, while you
Sure.
have me on.
Yes.
I wanted to say see you tomorrow to 3 gentlemen in the room. Larry, Cliff, and Stephen are all joining my American history class tomorrow. They're going to be telling their stories of their Vietnam War to my Canadian students tomorrow.
Now, which Larry are we talking about? The good Larry or the bad Larry?
I'm not sure which is which.
The good Larry.
Larry Wood.
Oh, the good Larry Woods. Okay, then you're fine. You're fine.
Not that fighter pilot.
Not the fighter pilot. That's good. Good.
So it'll be an interesting day tomorrow. And gentlemen, the kids are all psyched to ask you about what music you listened to in the 1960s. So be ready for that.
Oh, that is so great. How terrific. And we have Larry Gamrett too, a third Larry, and he's an Army Larry. He's a good Larry. Hi, Larry Gamrett. Your hair has grown since I've last seen you. Good to see you. I also saw Jeff and Shannon Arbeyo are with us. Jeff, if you want to unmute yourself, we did an unforgettable program with you last week with Scramble the Sea Wolves, with some Navy helicopter crew members who served in Vietnam in the Mekong Delta. We screened your film, and we had the wonderful conversation after the screening with you and Shannon, and also with the veterans. I know that you are in the works, that you're in the midst of a big 30-day campaign, 35-day campaign, raising money for your Mobile Riverine Force documentary, which is I think of as a logical follow-up to Scramble the Sea Wolves, this wonderful documentary that aired on PBS. Would you mind talking a little bit about that film, the Mobile Riverine Force film, and your campaign?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So obviously, when we took on this program right when COVID started, so it was a really tough time to really take on a documentary, because it was hard to try to get all the interviews in. So it's been a tough documentary to work on, and I've been doing documentaries now for a long time. I started back in 1990, I think is when I started doing documentaries. So this has been one of the toughest because of COVID. But if you don't know the story of the Mobile Riverine Force, they are the highest decorated squadron with combined Army Navy in the Vietnam War. They have 11 Medal of Honor recipients. And, you know, we're talking about Army and Navy working together in the Mekong Delta, which most people don't even know about the Mekong Delta. When I talk to even a lot of veterans who were in Vietnam, and I talk to them about the Mekong Delta, and then I say something about the Navy, most of the time they think, oh yeah, the Navy's way out there with the ships out in the ocean. And I say, no, I'm talking about the Brownwater Navy. And when I say the Brownwater Navy, they're not really sure who I'm talking about. So this is a really good documentary to bring people into the light of the Brownwater Navy and what they did. And then when you hear the story of the 9th Infantry and the things that they had to deal with, everything from the water to the mud to the fire ants to the snakes to trying to sleep at night, and the tide would be low and they would be on these little blow up I guess like a mattress or a raft or almost something like that. And then the tide would come in and some of the guys would get taken down the river and wake up and they'd be down the river. So they had to deal with all that plus snakes and everything else. And on top of that, they're fighting the enemy.
Yes, right.
So yeah, it's an amazing story what these guys went through. And the reason my wife and I took on the project is because we want people to know what our Vietnam veterans went through. And a lot of people, obviously when they came home, they didn't get the great welcome home. And so we want people to understand what they went through, what they did, and the sacrifice that these men gave.
I want to let people know, if you didn't get a chance to watch Scramble the Sea Wolves with us, you can still for a while on VetStream TV, vetstreamtv.com. It is streaming for free, I believe. Correct, Jeff? For a little while longer, for a week maybe?
Yes.
It is absolutely an education, and it has it all. I mean, you'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll see, you know, a 360-degree view of this really complicated, important ongoing operation that occurred in the Mekong Delta between 1966 and 1972. Wonderful, wonderful footage that I can't believe that you were able to get access to, kind of helping to tell the story of this first Navy attack squadron there, or operation in the Mekong Delta. Really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that was our first introduction to the Brownwater Navy and what the Sea Wolves did with all the boats down in the water there. And so that's why we wanted to continue on with this with the Mobile Riverine Force. And that's why we're doing the Indiegogo campaign to raise money. We're in the post-production part right now. And so we're just trying to get our finishing cost to finish up the movie and get it all done. Like I said, it was a really tough situation to get all the interviews, and we did it somehow.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you, Shannon, for joining us tonight and sharing more of that info and just hearing Bud's story. I want to could we get Bud back on, Bud Mendenhall back on?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So, Bud, did you ever miss the Navy after
a few years, maybe 20 years.
Did you really?
I so appreciate what I've learned there. You know, I think that really helped me in life.
How so?
You know, the respect that, you know, your elders, a lot of respect, you know, and to work hard.
Yeah.
And I think that's what would be good for the kids today to do. Which, you know, I was 17. I was a young, smart aleck kid, but I learned a lot when I went in there. And it helped me.
That is almost unfathomable, Bud, that you were 17 years old, you joined the military, you get sent to war. And many of our veterans in this room tonight had the same experience,
yes,
before and later. And it's just so striking to me what responsibility we gave to such young people, and it made you grow up fast, I imagine.
It just helped. Yeah, it just helped so much. You know, I think there's a lot of respect lost nowadays, and I don't. I think if they spent like 2 years in the service, it would help them some.
Yeah, I agree. And have South Koreans ever come up to you? Have you ever had the occasion?
Oh my golly, we
Tell me
got
about that.
South Koreans here in Fort Wayne. They got a church and that. Every Thanksgiving they hold a dinner for us, and there's about 300-400 people come to that, veterans, and they have Korean food and American food. And out here at the shrine, we have the Korean day and that, and they come out here, and oh yeah, they thank us so much for what we did, you know, and this really makes you feel good that it, you know, pays off, and they're always there thanking us. And this Mrs. Lee who comes out, she's usually one that talks to Reverend Hahn, but she was 11 years old when she got bayoneted over there crossing the line from north to south.
Wow,
Yeah,
That's also true in Canada. It's the same sort of relationship with Canada and the South Korean veterans, the South Korean community in Canada. But the way I want to thank Bud for his presence. I learned a lot. This is my first exposure to your organization. I'm quite impressed. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Mort.
Well, thank you.
And Canadians have higher standards than we Americans, so that's we're especially grateful.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Thank you very much. That's great. I do want to open it up for questions, conversation, more discussion, if you'd like. What did you do for a living, Bud, after you came home?
Well, I went back. At General Electric company. I worked for them, and I was still young yet. You know, I was 20 years old when I got out, 21. And so I did odd jobs, and I finally got in a restaurant tavern business. And I was in that for 26 years, the restaurant tavern business.
What's that?
I had a bar, a tavern.
Oh, a tavern. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, tavern.
I've had some familiarity with taverns over the years, Bud.
Yeah, well, I met my wife. I went, got a job at the hospital in surgery. And then I met the doctors. He's asked me to come to work for them, and that's where I met my wife's a urologist. And then I got married, and then that's when I drove truck for a little while, then got in tavern restaurant business, and I worked till I was 81.
Oh my goodness. How long have you been married?
62 years, be 63 this year.
Unbelievable. How wonderful. 63 years this year. Yes, and the Blue Jays did just sweep I believe the Blue Jays swept the Pirates this weekend. They did because they have higher standards. Good point there, Scott. Very good point. It is, Bud, do you remember, you were a child during World War II, so
yeah, I remember it though.
You remember it. Can you tell me, what are your childhood memories of the war?
I'll tell you what, my brother and I were coming out the theater downtown, and we walked out, and the streets were just packed with people. The main street on Calhoun Street, you couldn't, as far as you could see, was people. They were hugging one another, and they were saying, "The war's over. The war's over." And that's what I remember about then. I remember the neighbor. A year later, he come walking home. He's in his army outfit, walking up the driveway. He went right to work about the next week at General Electric.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. So I'm sure it's that whole culture of World War II that kind of prepared you then, that when your turn came, you would end up going into the service.
Yes. And just talking to him, and just, yeah.
Yeah, the expectation was there that that's what you would be, that you would serve. Greg Yost, you've put some wonderful comments here in the chat. You are a resident historian. I will defer to you to have you give people kind of a little nutshell history of VE Day, because it was not quite straightforward. It's an interesting story, isn't it?
Yes, it is very much. At the end of the war, well, Hitler committed suicide on April 30th. So he was in Berlin in his bunker, and the government devolved to some of the people who it should have gone to or thought people was going to go to, Hitler felt had betrayed. So it ended up with the Admiral Karl Dönitz. And the Germans knew that they had lost. Any rational German knew that they had lost. So they were trying, some had been trying to negotiate a separate surrender to the Western Allies, thinking they would get better terms from the Americans, the British, the French. In fact, on May 2nd, the Germans in Italy surrendered. So to a certain extent, the war in Italy ended a few days before. The Germans just surrendered. They were pretty much kicked out of Italy by that time, but the general in charge of the German forces surrendered in Italy on May 2nd. During that week, the Germans were trying to get as many of their forces close to American, British, or French units as possible, so that when they did surrender, they would be surrendering to Americans, British, or French, and not to Russians. That's the way that it was. So finally, on the morning, very early at like 2:30 in the morning, a German, a big shot German general, in effect, sort of like the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, shows up at the Allied headquarters in Reims, France, SHAEF headquarters with Eisenhower, and he agrees to surrender. He agrees to an unconditional surrender. If you're interested in international law, the unconditional surrender was only of the German military forces. It was not the German state. So the German military forces all surrendered, but there was still a functioning German state headed by Admiral Karl Dönitz, which becomes sort of important later when they tried the people for war crimes, so that they could still hold the German state accountable for the war crimes. It wasn't like there was a new Germany created at the end on May 6th, May 7th, May 8th. So very early in the morning on the 7th, they surrender. Everyone knew Germans were going to surrender. So some news reports started to hit the United States as early as the late evening of May 6th, especially out in the West Coast. So the Russians weren't too happy that the Germans surrendered to the Americans, British, and French. So they demanded that a more formal surrender be held in Berlin, A, the capital of Germany, B, now under the occupation of the Russians. Right. So a really big ceremony after pretty much the guns had silenced was held on the 8th. And then 2 weeks later, the German government had moved to a town up by Denmark called Flensburg. So Admiral Karl Dönitz was running the German state, such as it was, from Flensburg up by Denmark. And 2 weeks later, he gets arrested.
Yes. And he was tried at Nuremberg. So why, there was a question, I think Chad asked this, and it's a good one. Is it a matter of time zones that Victory Day in the Soviet Union or in Russia is May 9th? Was it May 9th when, the victory was heard and acknowledged in Russia?
I don't know enough about that. It is very possible that given Russian communication and given Russian Far East, I mean, Vladivostok or something, they may have it may have been May 9th in Vladivostok. So they wanted to sort of, acknowledge the entirety of the eastern flank of the Russian Soviet Empire. That's a really good, I don't know why May 9th is Victory Day.
I think I saw Scott Masters nodding his head yes, that was the reason, that it was a time zone issue. And
I don't know about the Vladivostok thing, but I was just reading something about this earlier when I was doing the Victory Day post, and it did say on Moscow time it was May 9th by the
Fair
time
enough. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
May 9th Moscow time. Hey, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Greg, so much. Thank you, Joe Griffiths and Jeff Arbea, and of course Brad Washabaugh and Bill Confer and Bruce Unks and all the other participants in our program, to Henry Shepke, Julia Parsons, Bud Mendenhall. Thank you for joining us from Fort Wayne. And
it's my pleasure and honor.
And thank you to Robert Thomas for educating us a bit about that wonderful institution you have there. Please do join us anytime, Bud. Would love to have you anytime you want to rig up the Zoom and join us. Would love to have you.
I'm going to have to learn to do that. That's for sure. Right. Especially now after I've seen this. This is really neat.
Oh, it's so neat. It's so neat. It's a highlight of my week. So, hey, thanks for everybody for joining us. Thanks for Sean for engineering the program. And Stay well, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you next Monday night for our VBC happy hour on May 15th. Take care. Good night.
Good night. Thank you. God bless.